Imagine a dirt road outside a small town in northern India. It is dusk. The air smells like wood smoke and cattle dung and the fading heat of a day that has lasted too long. 5 men sit in a deer park at the edge of the road. They are thin, dangerously thin. Their ribs press against their skin like the bars of a cage. They've not eaten a full meal in years because they believe starvation will set them free. And now, walking toward them on the road, they see a man they used to follow. His name is Siddhartha Gautama. They had practiced with him for years, matching him breath for breath, fast for fast, suffering for suffering. And then one morning, he did something unforgivable. He ate. A woman from a nearby village offered him a bowl of rice milk, and he took it. He chewed, he swallowed, and the 5 men looked at each other and walked away. Because if you eat, you have given up. If you eat, you are not serious about the truth. That was weeks ago. Now he is back, and the 5 of them make a pact. They will not greet him. They will not stand. They will not offer him water. He is a quitter. He broke. But here's the thing about Siddhartha Gautama. Something has changed. The texts say that as he gets closer, the 5 men cannot help themselves. Something in the way he walks, the way he holds his body, the way his eyes sit in his face. They stand up. One of them takes his bowl. Another prepares a seat. They do not know why they are doing this. He sits down, and the first words out of his mouth are not about God, not about heaven, not about the soul. He says, "There is dukkha." That word, dukkha, say it like dukkha, is usually translated into English as suffering. And that translation has been quietly doing damage for over 100 years. Because when a Western reader hears life is suffering, they hear pessimism. They hear nihilism. They hear a man who gave up on joy, and they put the book down. But that is not what he said. Not even close. This is not a story about pessimism. This is not a story about giving up on the world. This is not a story about a religion that teaches you everything is pain and the best you can hope for is escape. This is a story about a man who built the most precise diagnostic tool for human unhappiness ever created and gave away the cure for free. One of the 5 men listening that evening, the oldest, a man named Kandana, who had known Siddhartha since the day he was born, will understand the teaching before the sermon is even finished. Not intellectually, something deeper, something the text described not as learning but as seeing. We will come back to Kandana, but not yet. First, we need to talk about what the Buddha actually said, because it is not what you think. Let's start with what dukkha actually means. The word comes from an old prefix du, meaning bad or wrong, and kha, meaning hole. Specifically, the hole at the center of a wheel. A wheel with a bad axle hole does not shatter. It does not explode. It just wobbles. Every rotation, a little off. Not catastrophe, not agony. Just a persistent low-grade wrongness that you cannot fix by pushing harder. That is what the Buddha was pointing at. Not the death of your child, not the loss of your home, not the worst day of your life. He was pointing at the Tuesday, the ordinary Tuesday when you are sitting on your couch and your phone is charged and your bills are paid and nothing is actually wrong. But something in your chest feels like it is listing to one side. You scroll, you eat something, you check your phone again. You are not in pain. You are just off. That is dukkha. And you have felt it your entire life. There is a woman in the suttas named Kisa Gautami. Her story is one of the oldest in the Buddhist canon, and it will break your heart if you let it. Kisa Gautami had one son. He was young. The texts say he had just learned to walk. And then he died. The texts do not say how. It does not matter how. What matters is what she did next. She picked up his body and carried him from house to house through her village, knocking on every door asking for medicine. "Please," she said, "my son is sick. Do you have medicine?" The neighbors looked at the dead child in her arms and said nothing. Some closed their doors. Some wept. One of them finally told her, "Go see the teacher, the one they call the Buddha. He might have medicine." She went. She stood in front of him holding her dead son and said, "Do you have medicine?" And here is what the Buddha did not do. He did not tell her suffering is an illusion. He did not tell her the child was in a better place. He did not explain the first noble truth. He said, "Bring me a mustard seed from any house in the village where no one has ever died." She went, door to door, and at every door, the same answer. "We lost our father last year. My sister died when I was 10. We buried our eldest before the rains." Every house, every single house. Gautama came back without a mustard seed. She laid her son's body down, and she understood the first noble truth. Not because someone explained it to her, but because she walked the route with her own feet. The Buddha never said, "Life is suffering," to Gautama. He let her discover what dukkha actually means. It means, this is the shape of things. Loss is not a malfunction. It is the wheel turning. And the wobble you feel is not a sign that something has gone wrong. It is a sign that you are paying attention. Here's what most people miss. The Buddha did not stop at the diagnosis. He gave a cause. The second noble truth, samudaya, say it like sa-amudaya, identifies the origin of dukkha, and the word he used for that origin is tanha. Tanha. It is usually translated as craving or desire, but the literal meaning is thirst, not want, not preference. Thirst, the desperate, throat-closing, animal clutching of a body that believes it will die without water. That is the energy the Buddha was describing. The way you grab at a relationship when you feel it slipping. The way your hand reaches for your phone before your conscious mind has even decided to check it. The way you replay a conversation in your head at 2 in the morning, rewriting it, trying to get the version where you win. There is a teaching called the parable of the 2 arrows. It comes from the Salatha Sutta. The Buddha says, when an untrained person is struck by a painful experience, it is like being hit by an arrow. That is the first arrow. It hurts. You cannot avoid it. But then the untrained person does something. They panic. They resist. They tell themselves a story about what this pain means, who is to blame, how unfair it is, how it will never end. That is the second arrow. And the second arrow, the one you fire at yourself, is the one that causes most of your suffering. Pay attention to this. The Buddha is not saying, stop wanting things. He tried that. He spent 6 years in the forest, starving himself, sleeping on thorns, holding his breath until he fainted. He nearly died. And at the end of 6 years of the most extreme anti-desire program ever attempted, he was not free. He was just hungry and broken and no closer to the truth. So he ate the rice. He let the 5 ascetics walk away. And he found something that actually worked, not by killing desire, but by understanding the mechanism beneath it. The third noble truth is the one nobody talks about. Nirodha. 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 Cessation. The fire can go out. If the Buddha had given only 2 truths, there is suffering, and it is caused by craving, he would have invented the most depressing philosophy in human history. But he did not stop at 2. He said, this thing that is burning in you, this thirst, this grabbing, it can end. Not when you die, not in your next life, not in some paradise you earn through good behavior. Here, in this body, in this mind. This truth is the hinge of the entire system, and most people skip right past it. You want proof that the third truth is not just theory? There was a monk named Ananda who spent 25 years at the Buddha's side. 25 years. Every teaching, every discourse, every late-night conversation. Ananda was there. He had a memory so precise that after the Buddha's death, he recited entire suttas word for word at the first council. He understood the 4 noble truths better than almost anyone alive, and he was not free. The night before the first council, the other monks told Ananda he could not attend. The council required full awakening. Ananda had spent a quarter century serving the Dharma, and he was about to be shut out. That night, Ananda sat alone. He practiced with everything he had. He pushed, he strained, nothing happened. And then, the texts say it happened as he was lying down to sleep in the space between sitting and resting. In the moment he finally stopped trying, he let go. Not of the teaching, not of the desire to understand. He let go of the one thing he had been gripping for 25 years, the belief that understanding was enough. Ananda knew the map by heart. He had just never put his feet on the road. The fire went out. The third noble truth is real. But it asks for something beyond knowing. So let's stop here for a moment. 3 truths in, and already the picture looks nothing like what most people expect. The first noble truth is not life is suffering. It is a precise diagnosis of a wobble you have always felt but never had a word for. The second noble truth is not desire is bad. It is a map of the specific mechanism that keeps you firing arrows into your own chest. And the third noble truth, the one almost nobody mentions, says the fire can actually go out. Not someday. Not after death. Now, if this is landing differently than what you were taught, you are exactly where the Buddha wanted you to be. He did not build this system for people who already agreed with him. He built it for the 5 men in the deer park who thought he was a quitter. There is one truth left, the fourth, and it is the one that changes everything, because it is not a truth at all. It is a prescription, a training manual with 8 parts, and it looks nothing like a list of commandments. If you are still here, you are the kind of person this channel exists for. Hit subscribe. I make one of these every week, no fluff, no mysticism, just what the texts actually say. And if something in the first 3 truths made you pause, tell me in the comments which one. I want to know. Now, the fourth noble truth. The Pali word is magga. Magga. It means path. And the fourth noble truth says, there is a path that leads to the end of dukkha. But here is the part nobody tells you. The Buddha did not invent this structure. He borrowed it. In ancient India, long before the Buddha was born, doctors followed a standard protocol when a patient came to them sick. 4 steps. First, identify the disease. What exactly is wrong? Second, identify the cause. What is producing this disease? Third, determine the prognosis. Can this be cured or is it terminal? Fourth, prescribe the treatment. What does the patient need to do? Symptom, cause, prognosis, treatment. That is not a philosophical framework. That is a medical one. Scholars who have spent their entire careers inside the Pali Canon, Bhikkhu Bodhi, Rupert Gethin, say this is not a coincidence. The Buddha followed the medical structure on purpose. He was not writing poetry. He was not crafting a theology. He was diagnosing a condition and writing a prescription. And this changes everything about how you hear the teaching. Because when your doctor says you have high blood pressure, you do not walk out of the office and tell your friends, my doctor says life is blood pressure. The diagnosis is not a verdict. The diagnosis is the first step toward treatment. The Buddha's first noble truth works the same way. There is dukkha is not a philosophy of despair. It is the opening line of a medical chart. Stay with me. Because the prescription itself, the Eightfold Path, is stranger than you expect. You have probably seen this list before. Right view, right intention. Right speech, right action. Right livelihood, right effort. Right mindfulness, right concentration. 8 items. It looks like a moral code. It reads like commandments. And the word right makes it worse. It sounds like the Buddha is wagging his finger at you, telling you there is a correct way to live and you are probably doing it wrong. But the Pali word translated as right is samma, summa. And samma does not mean morally correct. It means complete, aligned, skillful. A wheel with a samma axle hole is not a righteous wheel. It is a wheel that does not wobble. You are back to dukkha, back to the off-center hole. The Eightfold Path is not 8 rules for being a good person. It is 8 ways to recenter the wheel. And the 8 are not a checklist you work through one by one. The Buddha organized them into 3 clusters. Think of it as 3 training zones. The first cluster is wisdom, how you see, right view and right intention. This is not about believing the correct doctrine. It is about looking at your own experience clearly enough to see the 4 truths operating in real time. When you notice yourself reaching for your phone for the 4th time in 10 minutes and you catch the thirst beneath the reaching, that is right view. You did not need anyone to tell you craving was there. You saw it yourself. The second cluster is ethics, how you act. Right speech, right action, right livelihood. The Buddha did not say, be good so you earn heaven. He did not say, meditate so you escape the world. He did not say, believe these 8 things and you are saved. He said, practice these 8 skills and see what happens. Your actions create feedback loops. If you lie, you generate anxiety. If you harm, you generate guilt. These are not punishments from the universe. They are natural consequences that feed dukkha. Ethics in the Eightfold Path is not morality. It is engineering. You are reducing the inputs that keep the wobble going. The third cluster is meditation, how you train your mind. Right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration. This is the laboratory. This is where you sit down and watch the mechanism the second noble truth described. Tanha, the thirst, arising and passing in your own nervous system. Not as a concept, as a sensation, as something you can feel in your chest, in your jaw, in the tightening of your hands. And this is where it gets remarkable, because what the Buddha described 2,500 years ago as a training protocol, sit, observe the mind, watch craving arise and pass without reacting, turns out to produce measurable changes in the brain. Richard Davidson's lab at the University of Wisconsin has spent over 20 years scanning the brains of people who meditate. What they found is not subtle. The prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain that regulates emotional reactivity, thickens. The amygdala, the alarm system that fires when you feel threatened, becomes less reactive. The brain physically reorganizes itself along the lines the Buddha prescribed. The path is not a metaphor, it is a training program, and it works on the organ it was designed to train, but it only works if you walk it. And here's where the stakes get higher than your personal 3 a.m. restlessness. There was an emperor. His name was Ashoka, and in the 3rd century before the Common Era, he ruled most of the Indian subcontinent. He wanted a region called Kalinga, so he took it. The war killed over 100,000 people. The rivers ran with blood. The texts say this literally, not as metaphor. Ashoka walked the battlefield afterward, and something broke. He did not become a monk. He did not renounce his throne. He did something more difficult. He stayed in power and changed how he used it. He converted to Buddhism, and he did something no one had done before. He took the 4 noble truths and carved them into stone. Rock edicts, pillars erected across the empire. The earliest physical evidence we have of the Dharma spreading beyond one person speaking to another in a room. Ashoka read the prescription, and instead of keeping it for himself, he carved it into the earth so that no one would lose it again. The 4 noble truths are not a personal self-help tool. They are not a philosophy for your meditation app. They are a framework that an emperor who had drowned a kingdom in blood looked at and said, "This is the only thing that can fix what I have done." Now, let's go back to the deer park. The Buddha has finished speaking. The sun has gone down over Sarnath. The 5 ascetics are sitting in the dark with a man they had written off, and the air between them is changed. He has laid out 4 truths. Not beliefs, not commandments, a structure. There is a wobble at the center of human life. The wobble has a cause, a thirst so deep you barely notice it running. The wobble can end, and there's a specific, trainable path to that ending. 4 of the 5 men are still processing. They are turning the teaching over in their minds, testing it against their years of fasting and discipline and everything they thought they knew about liberation. It will take them days. Some of them will need weeks. But Kandana, the old one, the one who had been at Siddhartha's naming ceremony when the prince was 7 days old, does not need days. The Pali phrase is kakumudapadi. Say it like chakumudapwa ihd. It means the eye arose. He saw it, and what he said in that moment was not a summary of the 4 noble truths. It was not a repetition of what the Buddha had taught. It was one line, and the line contained everything. Whatever has the nature of arising has the nature of ceasing. That is it. That is the entire system in 9 words. Whatever arises, the craving, the grief, the joy, the anxiety, the love, the thirst, it will cease. Not because you killed it, not because you earned its departure through discipline, because that is the nature of things that arise. They end, and when you stop fighting that fact, when you stop gripping what is arising and pushing away what is ceasing, the wheel stops wobbling. The Buddha looked at him and gave him a new name, Kondana. Kondana, who knows, not Kondana who believes, not Kondana who agrees, Kondana who knows. There is one more thing. There was a man in the 20th century who arrived at the same door from the opposite direction. His name was Viktor Frankl. He was a psychiatrist in Vienna, and in 1944, the Nazis sent him to Auschwitz. Frankl lost everything. His wife, his parents, his brother, his manuscript, an entire book, the work of years taken from his coat lining and destroyed. He was shaved, stripped, numbered, and placed in a camp where the smoke from the crematorium was visible from the barracks. He did not have the Four Noble Truths. He had never read the Pali Canon. But inside that camp, Frankl discovered something the Buddha had described 25 centuries earlier. He could not control the first arrow. The starvation, the colds, the guards, the death around him, those were real, unavoidable. But the second arrow, the story he told himself about what this suffering meant, that was his. Frankl wrote later that the men who survived the camps were not the strongest. They were not the most aggressive or the most cunning. They were the ones who found a way to change their relationship to the suffering. Not to deny it, not to explain it away, but to see it clearly and choose how to respond. He called it the last of the human freedoms. The freedom to choose your attitude in any given set of circumstances. The Buddha called it the third noble truth. The fire can go out, not because the world stops burning, because you see where the fuel is coming from. Frankl did not sit under a fig tree. He stood in a frozen field at 4 in the morning being counted. And he arrived at the same place Kondana arrived at in the deer park. The recognition that suffering is real. Its cause is visible, and there is something in you that is not consumed by it. Something that can see the fire without being the fire. But you do not need Auschwitz to find this door. And you do not need the deer park. You need a Tuesday. The Tuesday when you are lying in bed and your mind will not stop replaying a conversation from 3 days ago. The Tuesday when you open the refrigerator for the 3rd time knowing nothing in there will fix what you are feeling. The Tuesday when you sit down to work and find yourself 45 minutes deep into a feed you do not even enjoy, and you look up and something in you asks, "What am I doing? What am I actually looking for?" That question. That exact question. That is the first noble truth arriving in your living room. Not as philosophy, not as a religion, as a direct experience of the wobble. And the Four Noble Truths, the real ones, not the bumper sticker, give you a protocol for that moment. Step 1. See the wobble. Do not run from it. Do not numb it. Name it. Step 2. Find the thirst underneath. What are you reaching for? What do you think will make the wobble stop? Step 3. Recognize that the thirst itself is temporary. It arose. It will cease. You do not have to obey it. Step 4. Practice. Not perfectly. Not like a monk. Like a person who has been given a prescription and decides to fill it. And here's where the misconception dies for good. The Four Noble Truths are not a statement about reality. They are not a verdict. They are not the Buddha standing at a podium saying, "Life is suffering, good luck." Each truth has a verb. The first truth is to be understood. The second truth is to be abandoned. The third truth is to be realized. The fourth truth is to be developed. 4 truths, 4 tasks. The Buddha did not ask you to believe a single thing. He asked you to do something. So here is what you are taking with you. First, the Four Noble Truths are not a philosophy of suffering. They are a medical protocol, symptom, cause, prognosis, treatment, built by a man who spent 6 years trying every other method and failing. The word dukkha does not mean agony. It means the wobble, the off-center hole in the wheel of your daily life. And the system does not end with the diagnosis. It includes the cure. Calling the Four Noble Truths life is suffering is like reading the first line of a doctor's report and throwing away the prescription. Second, you can use this tonight. The next time something feels off, the restlessness that sends you to the refrigerator, the scroll that never satisfies, the tightness behind your ribs that you cannot quite name, stop, just for a moment, and ask yourself one question. What am I thirsting for right now? You do not need a cushion. You do not need a monastery. You do not need to call yourself a Buddhist. That question is the second noble truth in action. And the moment you ask it, you have already started walking the path. Third, the Buddha did not teach the Four Noble Truths because life is terrible. He taught them because he believed you could handle the truth. He looked at 5 men who had given up on him, and he did not soften the message. He did not promise them heaven. He did not offer them comfort. He offered them clarity. And clarity, the kind that sees suffering without flinching, that sees craving without obeying, that sees the fire and knows it can go out. That is the only thing that has ever set anyone free. Not belief, not ritual, not hope, seeing? Which of the 4 truths hit you differently after this video? Was it the first, the wobble you have been feeling your whole life but never had a name for? The second, the thirst running underneath everything you reach for? The third, the one nobody mentions, the one that says it can actually end? Or the fourth, the realization that this was never a philosophy at all but a set of instructions? Tell me in the comments. I read everyone. The Buddha gave his first teaching to 5 men who had given up on him. He sat in the dirt at dusk and described the shape of human suffering so precisely that the oldest man in the room saw something he had missed for 60 years. 2,500 years later, that teaching is still sitting there. Patient, unbroken, waiting for the next person willing to look. The question was never whether you believe it. The question is whether you are willing to look.